close your eyes for a moment. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that almost everything you've done, every choice you've made, every smile you've given, every silence you've endured, has been shaped by one invisible desire, the hunger for someone else's approval. Think of it: the clothes you wear, the words you speak, the way you adjust your laughter to match the room, the way you hold back truths that burn inside you, all of it subtly bent, molded, softened, or sharpened, to win the invisible nod of validation. But here's the paradox: the more you chase it, the further it runs. The more you bend, the less you feel whole. The more you seek to be seen, the more invisible you become to yourself. Step into this vision. You walk into a crowded room. Everyone is speaking, laughing, trading fragments of themselves like currency. You stand there, rehearsing words before they leave your lips, shaping your presence like clay. Inside, a quiet voice whispers, "Do they like me? Am I enough?" But pause and ask yourself, what would happen if, in that moment, you simply didn't care? Not in arrogance, not in cruelty, but in quiet liberation. What if their approval or disapproval no longer determined your worth? What would that room feel like? What would that freedom taste like? We live inside a contradiction. From childhood, we are told to be true to ourselves, to follow our own path, to stand tall in our uniqueness. Yet in the same breath, society teaches us to fit in, to be liked, to be praised, to win the applause that signals our existence is worthy. It's a cruel paradox. You were told you are already enough, yet everything around you whispers that you must earn that enoughness by being validated. And so you live in the in-between, chasing external mirrors to confirm what you secretly doubt inside. Here is the great question, the one that silently shapes the arc of a life. Who are you when no one is watching? When no eyes admire you? When no voices applaud you? When no screens light up with digital approval? Who remains? Can you stand in that silence without shrinking? Can you exist without a witness? Or is your identity only as strong as the reflection given back to you? Imagine drifting through your memories. Picture the last time you were praised, applauded, noticed. Feel the warmth that rushed in. Now picture the last time you were ignored, dismissed, unseen. Feel the cold sting that crept in. Here lies the hidden tension. Your worth feels borrowed, rented from others, as if your soul is a tenant in their hands. And yet, what if you reclaimed it? What if you no longer needed them to nod before you spoke your truth? What if you no longer shrank when they turned away? What if your self-respect was not negotiable, not fragile, not conditioned on applause, but steady, silent, immovable? But to get there, you must confront something uncomfortable. Because if you stopped seeking validation, if you truly stopped, parts of your life would fall apart. Relationships built on compliance would crack. Masks you've worn for years would slip. Certain people might even drift away, revealing that their love was tied not to who you are, but to how well you played the part they wrote for you. And so the fear arises. If I stop seeking validation, will I end up alone? But maybe the deeper fear is this: if I stop seeking validation, will I finally meet myself? Can you believe that? The very thing you have been taught to chase, approval, recognition, applause, is also the very thing that keeps you from peace. And can you imagine the inverse? That when you no longer crave it, when you finally release the need to be confirmed, life itself bends, shifts, transforms in ways you could never predict. Because here is the truth, waiting at the edge of this exploration. When you stop seeking validation, everything changes. So linger in this tension. Let the question echo through you. Who are you when no one is clapping? Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when silence is the only audience? The answers are not here, not yet, but the path is opening, and to walk it, you must. First step into the discomfort, into the paradox, into the haunting possibility that your life has been shaped not by freedom, but by the invisible chains of validation. Cinematic pause, whispered conclusion to the hook. Everything changes the moment you stop begging the world to confirm you. You see, the need for validation isn't just a bad habit. It's not as simple as saying, stop caring what people think. That advice sounds good in theory, but it never sticks, because the hunger for validation is rooted in something far deeper. It is woven into the very structure of how you became you, the childhood script from the moment you were born. You learned that survival meant pleasing others. A baby cries, and the mother rushes in. Approval equals comfort. Disapproval equals abandonment. As you grow, every smile of recognition, every pat on the head, every gold star, every good job, becomes the currency of existence. You learn, quietly and unconsciously, I am loved when I perform. I am safe when I please. I am worthy when I am approved of. Carl Jung once said, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents, and hidden inside that burden is another, the child's constant attempt to become what others need them to be, to fill in their gaps, to earn the smiles that mean you belong. Validation becomes not a want, but a survival mechanism. And so, it grows with you, silently, like a shadow that never leaves. The prison of mirrors. Imagine a hall of mirrors. Each mirror reflects a slightly distorted version of you. One for your parents, one for your friends, one for teachers, one for lovers, one for society at large. You walk through life adjusting yourself according to these reflections. If one mirror shows disappointment, you adjust. If another shows admiration, you lean closer. Slowly, your true image dissolves. You no longer ask, who am I? But rather, which reflection must I keep polished so that I don't disappear? Nietzsche warned of this when he spoke of the herd mentality. To live only for approval is to surrender your will, your originality, your soul to dissolve into the mass. You become a copy of what others find acceptable. But here's the trap. Mirrors never stop multiplying. The more you seek validation, the more fractured you become, and no reflection ever feels complete. The psychological root, conditional worth. Modern psychology describes this as conditional self-worth. You don't believe you have value simply because you exist. Instead, you tie your worth to conditions. I am worthy if I succeed. I am worthy if they love me. I am worthy if I fit in. This conditioning runs so deep that most people never notice it. But it explains why rejection feels like death, why silence feels unbearable, why criticism echoes louder than praise. Your nervous system was trained to equate disapproval with danger. That's why even the smallest frown can trigger shame. Sartre and the look of the Uthajin. Paul's Sartre, the existential philosopher, described something called the gaze of the other. He argued that when another person looks at you, they define you in their mind, and suddenly you experience yourself as an object. Their gaze freezes you. You start to see yourself not through your own being, but through their judgment. This is why you become self-conscious, why you adjust your posture when someone is watching, why your identity feels fragile in the presence of others. You become, as Sartre said, imprisoned in the look of the other. And the more you live in that prison, the more you begin to believe that without their gaze, you do not exist at all. Viktor Frankl and the vacuum within Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps, wrote about the existential vacuum, a deep emptiness that emerges when life is not rooted in inner meaning, but in external approval. He noticed that people who anchored their identity in validation crumbled when approval was taken away, but those who anchored themselves in an inner purpose, something no one could give or take, could withstand unimaginable suffering. Insight is crucial here. The hunger for validation is not just a weakness, but a void, and no amount of applause can ever fill it. Why the trap persists here is the cruel trick. The world benefits from keeping you addicted to validation. Society thrives on compliant individuals who are easy to control. Corporations sell products by whispering, "You are not enough until you buy this." Social media thrives on likes and shares that keep you hooked, begging for digital approval. Even relationships can become silent contracts. I'll approve of you as long as you keep being who I need you to be. The system doesn't want you free. It wants you hungry, chasing, bending, exhausted, because a person who no longer needs validation is a dangerous person. They cannot be bought, manipulated, or controlled. The mask and the abyss of it, perhaps the deepest reason you seek validation, is this: without it, you would be forced to face the terrifying possibility of your own unfiltered self. Imagine stripping away every mask, every performance, every smile for approval. Imagine standing before yourself with nothing to hide behind. That nakedness is frightening, and so, to avoid it, you keep polishing the mirrors, adjusting the masks, seeking the nods that reassure you. You are someone, you are enough, you exist, but beneath all of it lies the abyss, the question you're terrified to answer. If no one approves of me, do I still matter? And this is where the trap deepens. Because the truth is, as long as you believe validation defines your existence, you will never truly live. You will only perform, and performance, no matter how skillful, is not freedom. The roots of this hunger are ancient, psychological, philosophical, existential. They stretch back to your earliest memories, and they are reinforced by every structure of society around you, which means breaking free is not just about willpower, or defiance, or repeating the mantra, "I don't care what people think." No, it requires something far more radical. It requires dismantling the prison itself. And that brings us to the next step, not just where the problem comes from, but what it does to you, because the cost of seeking validation is far greater than you realize. The unseen consequences shape your life in ways that reach deeper than you can imagine. Picture this: you are an actor on a stage, but the script is never your own. Every line you speak, every gesture you make, is borrowed from someone else's expectations. At first, the applause feels intoxicating, but over time, the mask fuses to your skin, and you forget there was ever a face beneath it. This is what happens when validation rules your life. The consequences are not always loud. They are quiet, subtle, creeping, until one day you realize you have lost yourself entirely. 1. The erosion of identity when your worth is outsourced to others. Your identity begins to fragment. You are one version of yourself with family, another with friends, another online, another in solitude. Each version is slightly different, polished, to fit the approval of its particular audience. At first, this seems harmless. We all adapt. But over time, you begin to ask, which one is the real me? Psychologists call this self-alienation, the feeling of being a stranger in your own life. You don't hate yourself. You simply don't know yourself. Because every time you shaped yourself for others, a piece of your truth was abandoned. And abandoned truths don't disappear. They turn into whispers, into dissatisfaction, into the gnawing sense that something essential is missing. 2. Relationships built on performance now. Consider your relationships. When validation is your fuel, connection becomes conditional. You do not love freely. You perform to be loved. Think of how many times you've silenced your opinions to keep peace. How often you've exaggerated your enthusiasm to be liked. How many boundaries you've softened out of fear that firmness would cost you affection. On the surface, these sacrifices look like kindness, but underneath, they breed resentment. You feel unseen, because the version being loved isn't you. It's the mask, and the bitter irony is this. The more you seek validation, the less authentic your relationships become. People connect with your performance, not your essence, which means even when you are surrounded by others, you feel profoundly alone. 3. The tyranny of rejection. Unseen consequence is the disproportionate power rejection holds over you. When someone disapproves, criticizes, or simply ignores you, the pain feels unbearable. Neurologically, this makes sense. Studies using fMRI scans show that social rejection activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain. To be dismissed feels like being burned. But here's the twist. For someone addicted to validation, rejection is not just pain, it is annihilation. If approval is the source of your worth, then rejection is the proof that you are worthless. And so you begin to avoid risks. Avoid speaking truths. Avoid standing out. You shrink, not because you want to, but because rejection has become a god you cannot anger. 4. The exhaustion of endless performance living for validation is not just emotionally costly. It is physically draining. Every interaction becomes a calculation. What should I say to be liked? How should I look to be admired? What should I hide to avoid judgment? This constant self-monitoring leads to ego depletion, a psychological state where the brain's resources are drained by endless self-control. You feel tired, not because life is hard, but because you were never allowed to simply be. And so, by chasing approval, you trade authenticity for exhaustion. 5. The collective illusion. These consequences are not just personal, they are cultural. Look at social media, billions of people chasing hearts, likes, and followers. An entire digital economy built on the currency of validation. People edit their lives into highlight reels, not because it reflects reality, but because it reflects desirability. The result: a society where everyone feels inadequate, even as they contribute to the illusion. A collective hallucination. Billions of masks applauding billions of other masks, while the real selves sit in silence. Nietzsche's warning about the herd comes alive here. A world where individuals no longer live by their own truth, but by the fluctuating approval of strangers. 6. The death of inner compass. Perhaps the most tragic consequence is the loss of your inner compass. When validation guides your life, you no longer ask, what is right for me? Instead, you ask, what will be approved of? This distinction is subtle, but devastating. You might choose a career that looks impressive, but empties you. You might marry someone who fits social approval, but does not ignite your soul. You might silence talents, passions, or beliefs because they do not win applause. And one day, you wake up with the haunting realization you built a life that others respect. But you don't. Point 7. The quiet despair, the final consequence, is harder to name, but you felt it. It's the quiet despair that creeps in during still moments. The sense that despite all your effort, all your performance, all your approval earned, something is hollow. This is not failure. This is the soul's rebellion. It is the whisper that says, you were not born to live as a mirror. You were not born to beg for applause. You were born to be free. But as long as you remain chained to validation, that whisper remains a torment. You feel both the ache of longing and the weight of fear. The stakes so, let's pause and take stock. The hunger for validation costs you your identity, your authentic relationships, your courage, your energy, your freedom, and yet, the world rarely warns you of this cost. Instead, it applauds your obedience. It rewards your compliance. It hands you temporary approval and says, this is success. But deep inside, you know, you feel the fracture. You sense the emptiness. You carry the exhaustion. And that is the unseen consequence. Not simply that validation rules you, but that it robs you of the very life you were meant to live. The question, then, is this. If validation steals so much from you, why do you still cling to it? The answer lies in fear, but freedom is born in rebellion. And in the next step, we will explore that rebellion, the radical act of breaking free, and what it truly means to stop seeking validation. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you is the familiar ground of performance, approval, validation, the land you've always known. Ahead is open sky, terrifying in its vastness. The leap is simple. Let go of needing to be approved of. But your mind screams, if I jump, I will fall. I will lose everything. And yet, what if that is the only way to learn you were meant to fly? The radical reframe, breaking free from validation, is not about arrogance, nor about reckless defiance. It is about reclaiming your self-respect. For too long, you've believed self-respect was something others granted you when you were good enough. But rebellion begins when you realize self-respect is not earned externally. It is chosen. Internally, you respect yourself the moment you stop outsourcing your worth. Step 1. The paradox of discomfort at first. This rebellion feels like death. You will disappoint people. You will say no where you once said yes. You will express truths that others may dislike. Some relationships will falter. But here's the paradox. Every time you endure disapproval and remain whole, you grow stronger, like a muscle that only strengthens under resistance. Your soul develops resilience each time. You face the discomfort of not being validated. The discomfort is not a sign you are failing. It is proof you are free. Step 2. The practice of silence. When you stop seeking validation, silence becomes your ally. Think of how often you rush to fill silence with justification, with explanations, with performances designed to win approval. But rebellion means standing in silence without collapsing. You say your truth and then stop. You don't chase their nod. You don't explain yourself into acceptability. You let silence breathe. In that silence, something extraordinary happens. You discover that you are still intact, still alive, still worthy, even without their applause. Step 3. Boundaries as liberation. Rebellion also means boundaries. A boundary is not a wall. It is a declaration. This is where I end and you begin. When you live for validation, your boundaries are porous. You bend, stretch, and break to be liked. But when you reclaim your self-respect, you begin to say, no, this is my line. And yes, some will leave when you set boundaries, but those who remain, those who respect your edges, are the ones who truly see you. Step 4. The mirror of self-approval. Here's the most counterintuitive step. Learn to give yourself the validation you once begged from others. Not in vanity, not in ego, but in quiet affirmation. Stand in front of a mirror and ask, am I proud of who I am when no one is watching? If the answer is yes, you are free. If the answer is no, your work is not to beg others for approval, but to align your actions with the person you want to respect. The only validation that truly matters is the one you grant yourself. The stories of rebellion history is filled with those who broke free from validation, and in doing so, changed everything. Socrates, who refused to conform to the approval of Athens, and drank poison rather than betray his truth. Rosa Parks, who endured disapproval from the powerful, and in her quiet no ignited a revolution. Artists, philosophers, and visionaries across centuries who were ridiculed, rejected, dismissed, until the world caught up to their authenticity. Their rebellion was not against people, it was against the inner prison of needing peoples. Validation. Step 5. Living without the script. When you stop seeking validation, you begin to live unscripted. At first, this feels terrifying. No applause to guide you, no criticism to warn you, no reflection to polish. Just raw existence. But then, something miraculous happens. You begin to hear your own voice. The quiet intuition that was drowned out by the noise of others returns. You begin to act not from performance, but from authenticity. Your choices are no longer, will this make me liked? But does this align with who I am? This is freedom, living not for the crowd, but for the truth that stirs within you. The emotional shift. And, make no mistake, this rebellion is not only philosophical, it changes the texture of your life. Relationships become deeper, because they are no longer built on performance. Rejection loses its sting, because you no longer equate it with annihilation. Silence feels peaceful, not threatening. Energy returns, because you are no longer drained by endless calculation. The very atmosphere of your existence shifts. The dangerous beauty of freedom. But here is the warning. Freedom is dangerous. A person who no longer craves validation cannot be manipulated. They cannot be bribed with applause or threatened with disapproval. They walk through the world anchored, unshakable, and that kind of person frightens society, but it also inspires, because freedom is contagious. When one person dares to live without validation, others glimpse the possibility for themselves. The first tastes, so imagine it now. The first time you say no and don't explain. The first time you share a truth and don't flinch at disapproval. The first time you sit in silence and realize you are whole. That first taste of rebellion is electrifying. It is not loud, not dramatic. It is quiet, steady, undeniable, and once you taste it, you cannot go back. The rebellion, then, is not a single act. It is a way of living, a commitment to no longer let the gaze of others dictate your existence, a vow to respect yourself before you beg respect from anyone else. And this rebellion leads to the final revelation, the ultimate truth that lies beyond validation. Cinematic transition. When you stop seeking validation, you don't just change your relationships. You don't just change your confidence. You change the very ground you stand on. You discover a truth that is larger than approval, larger than rejection, larger even than the self you thought you knew. Close your eyes and imagine this moment. You are standing alone. No audience, no mirrors, no applause, no gaze to measure yourself against. At first, it feels terrifying, like stepping into an empty void. But then, something unexpected stirs. The silence doesn't crush you. The absence of validation doesn't erase you. Instead, you feel lighter, stronger, and then it dawns on you. You are never dependent on their approval. You only believed you were. This is the ultimate truth. When you stop seeking validation, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself. The shift from external to internal most people believe freedom means doing whatever you want. But true freedom is much deeper. It is living without the need to be confirmed. Approval and disapproval become background noise, like the weather. Nice when the sun shines, bearable when it rains, but irrelevant to the fact that you exist. This doesn't make you cold or unfeeling. It makes you real. You can still enjoy praise, but you no longer starve without it. You can still feel rejection, but you no longer collapse under it, because the axis of your worth has shifted from the external world into your own soul. Self-respect, a sacred ground at its core. The ultimate truth is this: self-respect is sacred when you honor yourself first. Every part of your life changes. Decisions become clearer because you no longer ask, what will make me liked, but what honors who I am. Relationships become richer because you no longer perform for love. You offer love as you are. Boundaries become natural, not forced, because you know where you end and where another begins. Purpose becomes visible because you are no longer distracted by applause. Self-respect becomes the soil in which everything else grows. The paradox of connection here lies another paradox. You fear that without validation, you will end up alone. But the opposite is true. When you stop begging for approval, you begin to attract people who resonate with your authenticity. You are no longer magnetic to those who loved your mask. You become magnetic to those who love your truth. It is not the crowd that deepens. It is the connections. Fewer, maybe, but deeper, stronger, real. The infinite game, the search for validation, is a finite game. Endless rounds of approval and rejection. Likes and dislikes, applause and silence. It is a game you can never win, because the rules are designed to keep you hungry. But when you step out, you enter the infinite game, the game of becoming. Here, the only measure is growth. The only approval that matters is your alignment with your values. You no longer compare your path to others, because your compass is internal. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of becoming who you are. It is not about perfection. It is about unfolding, step by step, into the fullness of your own being. The return of inner stillness, and something else happens, something subtle but profound. When you stop seeking validation, the noise quiets. The endless calculations, the rehearsals, the self-consciousness, all dissolve. What remains is stillness. In that stillness, you hear your own intuition again. You rediscover the voice within that always knew where to lead you, but was drowned out by the clamor of others. And in that stillness, peace returns. Freedom beyond fear. The ultimate truth is not that life becomes easier. Disapproval still comes. Criticism still stings. Loneliness still visits, but you are no longer ruled by them. You realize that disapproval cannot diminish you, because your worth does not depend on it. Criticism cannot undo you, because your compass is within. Loneliness cannot destroy you, because you are no longer a stranger to yourself. You stop fearing life because you stop fearing yourself, and that is freedom, not the absence of struggle, but the absence of chains. The world looks different when this shift happens. Even the world itself looks different. You see how so many are trapped in the prison of validation, chasing likes, applause, promotions, approval. You see the exhaustion in their eyes, the desperation in their smiles, and instead of joining them, you feel compassion. You no longer need to compete. You no longer need to prove. You simply walk your path, and by walking it authentically, you give others permission to do the same. Your freedom becomes a mirror that reflects possibility. The final realization on here is the deepest truth of all. Seeking validation is a way of avoiding yourself. It is a way of outsourcing the terrifying responsibility of self-definition. Because if others define you, then you never have to face the weight of defining yourself. But when you stop seeking validation, you accept that responsibility. You say, I am the author of my own worth. I am the witness of my own existence. I am enough even when no one claps, and that realization changes everything. Cinematic closures so return now to the image we began with, you, standing in a room, surrounded by people, laughter, voices, applause. Once you would have bent, adjusted, performed, begged silently to be seen. But now you stand quietly, grounded. Whether they approve or not is irrelevant, because you already approve of yourself, and in that moment you feel something extraordinary. The world has not changed, but you have, and because you have, everything is different. Final whisper when you stop seeking validation. You don't lose love, respect, or connection. You gain something far greater. You gain yourself, and in gaining yourself, you finally see everything changes.